Hello everyone and welcome back to Chapter by Chapter, still working our way through King of Scars. Today we're going to be talking about Chapter 9, which is a Nikolai chapter. And I'm ready to talk about Nikolai. I'm ready to learn about all the mysteries of the beast within him. After that last chapter, I'm ready to talk about anybody else besides Nina and Matthias.
And my heart is breaking again.
Okay, so we begin the chapter with Nikolai being completely exhausted from the whole beast incident the night before. Tolia got to be the one to fill him in all the lovely details about almost murdering his best friend
and future lover.
And Zoya really is one of Nikolai's truest friends. She keeps all of his darkest, deepest secrets. She's the one who he trusts without question, and he almost ate her.
And because he loves her, let's just admit it now.
What kills Nikolai even more than just the fact that he almost murdered Zoya is that Zoya is keeping her distance from him. He knows he needs to apologize to her, but for once in his life, he's at a loss for words. Nikolai really wants to talk to the monk, and this disgusts Zoya even more, puts her in even worse of a mood than she was in. He lets her know that Yuri's just worshiping this ideal of the Darkling, and they've both been guilty of that before. And this hurts Zoya's feelings even more. He just keeps adding to the shit pile that is Zoya's day. He tried to kill her. He hurts her feelings. Way to go, Nikolai. You're really winning her over now. Yuri comes into this meeting really defensive. He's really upset about where he had to stay. And then David stops when he realizes who he's surrounded by. And he's like fangirling over David like,
"Oh, you made Santa Alina's amplifiers. Oh, Jenya, you're the one who bears the mark of the Darkling."
But he just doesn't say she bears his mark. She says it's a blessing. And this just rightly pisses everybody off. Nikolai's trying to get them all to calm down, but it's Jenya who starts to stick up for herself. She says that the monsters that were put upon her, they had a taste for human flesh, and it was the Darkling that had to stop them. And he didn't want Jenya to die. He wanted her to live the way she's living now. Because there was a time where Jenya's beauty was what defined her and what she valued most. Nikolai reassures her, telling her that the Darkling was a complete fool for letting such a strong soldier survive. But even better, David tells Yuri that if he ever insults his
wife
again, that he'll kill him. And of course, Jenya's really excited by this, like,
you've never threatened to murder anyone for me before.
And I'm not surprised that she's into that.
Murder's just so cute and sweet and funny.
And then Yuri starts begging for forgiveness. He's probably really upset that he offended David, you know, the amplifier maker. Yuri says he's just extremely overwhelmed by being in the rooms of the Starless One. And this surprises everybody because it was only really their kind of group that found out that the Darkling, you know, wasn't this long ancestral line of Darklings. It was just one guy. And the reason Yuri knows this is because the Darkling came to him in a vision. And I'm kind of wondering, okay, is this like a legit vision? Did the Darkling actually come to him somehow from beyond the grave, or if there's like a shred of his power left? And then another part of me is like, oh God, did the apparat mess with him because
he's an asshole
and would totally, you know, do something like that? Or someone else entirely could have manipulated him. Yuri seems pretty eager to hop on that Darkling train. Not only does our dear Yuri believe that these strange happenings that are going on around Ravka are because of the saints, but the people actually believe this too. And some of those people believe that saints were actually Grisha. He lets them know that the saints are returning to Ravka, and the Starless One is one of them.
And I'm like, Zelina's somehow gonna come back.
Like, I know she lost her power, but technically she's a saint. Like, they made her a saint. She wasn't actually like martyred or died. I want to see her so bad. I'll get on whatever hype train I have to get on, you know, so I can see her again. Jenya's not really having it. She's like, hey, the Darkling's dead, watched his body burn. And of course, Yuri has to just come in and ruin all that and say, you watched his body burn, but not everyone thinks that all of him died, that his consciousness survived the fold, and he's just waiting his time to return.
And does this have to do with the Dark Bargain?
So yeah, the Darkling's body could have died, but he was such an ancient power. He may still live, you know, in the spirit world. And then Nikolai's like, shit, I have a scrap of this ancient power in me. And Yuri is very confident in knowing that these miracles are related to the Darkling. The incidents are actually occurring closer and closer to the fold, and Nikolai realizes that they're in a starburst pattern.
I'm the map, I'm the map, I'm the map. I don't know if you can see my map.
And these spots are actually closing in on where the Darkling and Alina made their final stand, and she killed him.
Or we think she killed him.
This is really upsetting Nikolai. He, already thought the Darkling died. He thought the war was over. He thought this monster within himself was long gone. And then here it all is coming back up again. He's questioning, was the monster always there or did something wake it up? And on top of all this great news that Yuri is dropping on them, he says that only days ago a sign appeared on the fold. There was a lake of black rock in the shape of a sun in eclipse.
Which is the Darkling symbol.
Yuri lets us know that's not only where the Darkling died, but it's where he created the fold itself. And it's a place of deep and ancient power. This was actually his subject that he studied when he was in the priest guard. And not only is this the place where the Darkling dropped all this dark power, but it's actually a holy site where, one of the saints basically got murdered. Saint Felix was pierced by apple boughs, and it's now known as an ancient place of healing
and glorious power
where men can be purified. And Nikolai's like,
shit, that's exactly what I need.
And everyone isn't really buying what Yuri's offering. But Tamar and Toilet come in because they're super religious and they are already very familiar with these stories and texts. They let everyone know that this is a real place. Actually called Obsidia. Even Nikolai's like,
what's this Obsidia buddy? Woody?
AKA the ritual of the burning thorn. Zoe dismisses this all as just children's stories, but what did we learn, from the first books? Alina got that children's book and it's what taught her about the amplifiers. It's what gave her all these clues. So I'm not dismissing these stories yet. Yuri's just telling all kinds of stories today. This leads Yuri to tell everybody about how the priest guard was actually formed. So the first king of Ravka actually brought all of these warring territories together and formed what the kingdom would be today. But even back then, the Fjordans and the Shu were just invading constantly. And they were constantly left in this state of war. And Nikolai's like, I relate. There was no second army of Grisha fighting at this time, so the first army was just fighting and dying. They didn't really seem to have a chance. So the first king went and built an altar, and that became the first royal chapel. He prayed that the saints would hear him. And the next day, this group of monks arrived. They could take the shape of beasts, and they vowed to the king that they would help him fight. They didn't ask for anything in return,
which is shady.
But one of them always had to remain by the king's side in Ravka, just so they could make sure that the king is always devoted to the saints. The battle lasted for so long that when it was finally done, that most of these priests couldn't even transform back into their human selves. So their leader brought them back to this ancient wood. There seems to be a lot of mysterious ancient woods in Ravka. So this dangerous ritual that they endured to try to get back to being human was
Obisi Baba. Obis Baya.
I even got the audiobook and I'm still not saying it right. But anyway, those who survived actually went on to become the priest guard. And their leader took his place beside the king like was promised, and he became the first apparat. I'm just wondering if the apparat, even back then, has always caused problems. Or did the first one have the right intentions? I don't know. Tolia goes on to say that the first priest guard were actually believed to be Grisha, and that in that version of the story, the animals that couldn't transform back were actually turned into the first amplifiers, and their spirits made the monks' powers even stronger. Which is kind of weird when you think about it, because they basically knew each other. Did these Grisha willingly sacrifice themselves because they were sick of being in their animal form, or they knew that they could somehow help their other friends? After this story, Yuri goes on to tell Nikolai that he believes that the saints actually brought him there in that moment to help Nikolai. And Nikolai's like, you're not really as crazy as you seemed. You kind of just wanted to get in. And Yuri's like,
yeah.
Obviously, Nikolai's really interested in this whole process that purges beast from man. And Yuri's not really sure what the process is exactly or the ritual, because he never got to finish his studies. And because Nikolai needs Yuri's help, he tells him that sure, I'll really consider making the Starless one of the saints, but I need you to stick around so I can really make that decision. And, maybe get you access to all those reading materials again. This obviously pisses off Zoya. She doesn't even want to entertain the fact that the Starless one could become a saint. Jenny doesn't blame Yuri for believing in the Darkling so strongly. She says that he's just drawn to his power like all of them were. Zoya tries to put up the disagreement that hey, we didn't know he was this awful, horrible person at the time. But Genya disagrees. I feel like I really need to reread the first book especially, but I feel like there were signs that showed he really wasn't the best. I mean, he did that whole thing that kind of seemed romantic and then was weird after, where he like just randomly pushed Jelena into a wall and was like kissing her and then just like left her. And I'm pretty sure he like didn't even talk to her for like days after or something. But Genya also mentions that there's people all over Ravka who are feeling this exact same way. They're all frightened and looking for something that's bigger than themselves, which is worrisome, because does that mean that a lot more people are going to start to like the idea of the Darkling being a saint? It worries Zoya. Worries me. She's worried, I'm worried. Toya thinks that there's actually something to this story. The priest guards weren't always just, you know, up the apparat's butt doing his bidding. They were actually holy warriors who didn't just serve the apparat, but they served the crown too. Toya starts to say how as he was a child, he really wanted to be one of these holy warriors, but he didn't join them because they wouldn't take Tamar because she was a woman. And that led him to question, if this is a holy order that claimed to want the best warriors to serve their gods and country, but they're not taking the best warrior out there, then he didn't want to be a part of it either. And I love him for this. He's one of my favorite characters in the book, I think. I kind of wish that we got more of him. So since Yuri discussed the pattern of these holy sites popping up closer and closer to the fold, that leads Nikolai to realize that the creature is actually getting closer to the fold too. He thinks that the creature is actually trying to get him to the same spot that they were discussing. He's like, maybe the beast wants to be rid of me too.
I think is very naive of him.
There's no denying at this point that everything's connected, not only to the Darkling, but to this one spot in the Shadowfold. So what do you do when all of these creepy clues are leading you to that one spot?
You make a pilgrimage there.
And to Zoya's dismay, they have to take Yuri with them. Nikolai acknowledges that, hey, this plan could lead to absolutely nothing, or this could lead us to the truth about the monster. But the King of Ravka just can't randomly leave their trip or neglect his duties at the palace. But, you know, this is Nikolai. He already has a plan up his sleeve. That plan is going to not only secure Ravka's future, even without an heir, it actually might be a way to keep the throne safe and not make Ravka seem so vulnerable. The idea came to him when he saw like those two trustworthy guards outside the waterfall whenever they came back from the Gilded Bog. And the whole thing with those two was that they looked so similar they could be brothers. So I'm guessing this is going to be a twin thing.
It takes two, baby.
After all of this, it makes Nikolai realize that he's really running out of time. All of these things just can't be coincidence at this point, and the beast is coming out of him more frequently. Ravka's falling to shambles. There's all that stuff going on with the apparat.
Probably being super sneaky behind his back, even though he doesn't realize it yet.
Nikolai can't deny the fear that is building in him. He has a lot of questions. What if his mind just completely unraveled with this beast? What if he ended up attacking or murdering one of his friends, and there's no one there to stop him? What damage could Nikolai really unleash as this beast, not only to his loved ones, but to the world? And in that moment, he refuses to give in to this. And with that confidence that he starts to feel, he feels the beast inside him recoil.
Is that enough?
Nikolai is not going down without putting up a fight. And that's the end of chapter 9 with Nikolai. So how is everyone feeling about this Yuri character? I feel like he's so involved and gullible with this Darkling cult that he really doesn't have anything else on his mind. He might end up betraying Nikolai, but it's not because it's this deep-seated plan. It will just be because, hey, like the Darkling comes back and he's gonna be like, screw you, Nikolai, I love the Darkling.
My starless one.
I'm also left wondering how Zoya's going to hold up during this trip. She hates the Darkling with a passion for obvious reasons. I don't think she's going to enjoy being around Yuri or listening to his ramblings very much. Is she going to warm up to Nikolai a little bit more after he tried to eat her? Oh, and don't forget she's probably freaked out because not only did Nikolai try to murder her, he, you know, spoke with the Darkling's voice that had a clear mindset for revenge and killing her. Thank you all for joining me.
Please like, subscribe, comment down below.
I really want to hear what you guys are thinking about these chapters. Are you enjoying the book so far, or are you expecting a little bit more? I'm pretty pleased with how everything's going. I'll see you guys next time on Chapter by Chapter.